Hello, fellow traders. My name is Alex Hermosilla. It is the second day of January 2018, and what I wanted to do was just give you a little bit of a snapshot as far as what I look for in in some of these trades, more so in the Bitcoin USD pair. The reason why I'm doing this is because I'm pretty sure there's a couple of guys out there that just started learning how to use these charts and also are new to MTI and new to trading. I've learned a great deal from MTI. I've looked and researched a lot in reference to how to trade and how to get out of trades and things like that. So I know there's a lot of movement right now in this Bitcoin. And I got out of the traditional currency pairs for a little bit because I like to trade Bitcoins right now. And one really caught my attention, which is this particular chart here. There's four different charts that I look at. So basically to start, I applied a lot of what I learned actually from MTI, which in my respectful opinion is one of the best schools in the country, in the world actually, because I haven't really didn't really learn much from a lot of these other websites that I used to learn from, and this one here seems to be right on. So to get started, this is my daily chat with Bitcoin, and what I did is I did some research in reference to when this coin initially came out, and it looks like it came out somewhere around 2012, if you can see that right there. So it's been pretty much bouncing around. It looks like there hasn't really been much movement, hasn't been really that popular. And I noticed it started taking off, so I'm like, you know what? There's the obvious direction in this currency pair is the fact that it's just going straight up, and people are making a ton of money, with this pair, especially the people that purchase these bitcoins at like, you know, 38 cents or 35 cents or whatever it was. But back to my chart. What I like to do is I like to follow the trend, and I like to look at direction, and I like to see if there's any change of direction. So I apply a lot of Fibonacci's on my charts, and I like to use the Smart Fibonacci, which is right over here. Just make sure I got this. Yeah, here it is here. So basically, if you click the Smart Fib, it it basically fills it up for you. So I started right around here, and it basically created one, two, three fibs up, and it's basically showing me the direction of this trend being, in an uptrend from what I'm seeing here. Now, um, if you noticed, these right here are A, B, C, Ds. Is A, B, and then you have your C retracement right here, and then it hit the D extension, and then again it's creating another A, B sequence. So you have your A, B for the Fibonacci there. It formed a C right around the right. This is right here, but let me just get closer. Each one of these has a numeric value to it. Um, Anyways, it was close to the blue line right here, which basically indicates that once it retraces back up, there's a pretty good possibility that it's going to hit this extension right here, which should be the D extension. But in this case, it didn't touch the blue line. It actually ended up um, retracing around the red line right there. So that's usually how I can gauge what direction it's going to hit. So if you noticed, it ended up retracing all the way up to this this extension right here, which we call the D extension. Okay. I used the smart fibs for this because that's how I was able to calculate, but it went further. It went even further. It went past the actual extension, and the market's going to do whatever it's going to do, however it's going to do it. So I pay close attention to, where there's going to be some type of like slowdown in the trend. So if you look, here's your A, there's your B, there's your C retracement, which is now the new A, and then it bounces all the way up to form the D extension right where the new B is. And the reason why we call this the old D extension, the new B extension, is because it shows a spike in price and it shows two candles that are lower than the actual D extension. So I would call that a new B, a new AB boundary. So what I do a lot of times is once this Fibonacci is created, I tend to look for a C retracement. The C retracement that I thought way back was right around this section right here, and it bounced up. Okay, so what I did is I drew a C retracement here, and I ended up, drawing a counter trend line from this point here. I'll show you what I did. So if I take the smart trend line and I click up here, and it shows me, and I usually extend that too. So I'll go to settings. I don't know why I extend it. I just like to extend it, and I like to kind of change the colors to it. In this case, because it's if it goes above the line, it would be like a bullish trend. So I'll make it green because that's the color that I like for being for the trend, and I'll give it maybe a solid line right there, and then I'll save it, and there you go. So we can also write down here that we did have a C retracement right around this section. Actually, you know what I can do is right there. This here. So I can move this just to, actually, you guys get the idea, sure. So in other words, this right here would be my C extension, okay, because it ended up bouncing back up. It broke the counter trend line, so it started heading upwards. So in other words, if you were to look for that C, you would have probably bought right around this area right here and just ride the wave all the way up. And again, I would draw a trend line to make sure that it doesn't break. So what I would do in this case is I would draw a trend line that would start right where the C began, which is right here. Okay. Oh, actually, I'm sorry about that. Let me rewind that and go into my smart trend line. I'm going to start right here. That's going to give me that trend line. I'm going to change it to red because red indicates a bearish trend. So what I usually do in a case like this is I end up, let me reset this tool, give it again, I like to extend my trend line. So what I like to do is I like to look for a break in trend line. So if you noticed, this ended up breaking, meaning that it was heading upwards. So right around this area would have been a good buy signal. And then you basically ride that all the way up until it forms, until it starts losing steam. And then obviously you have your trend line up there. If it breaks that trend line, then obviously it's going to go down, which it has. So again, I would draw another trend line just to kind of monitor that and basically give it a little bit of room to move around. But I probably would have gotten short on this one, depending on what the hourly looked like. But then again, because it's there's upward momentum in this pair, I probably wouldn't have jumped out. I probably just would have sold. In other words, like closed out my positions and held on to my USDs, and then once it formed a new C, which is you can see it formed a new C right there, capital C. It retraced back up, and as you can tell, I drew a trend line right there, observing it, and sure enough, it ended up breaking two trend lines. It broke the major and the minor and the major trend line, and it started going down in value. So this pair is kind of a scary pair, but I would definitely jump in on this one. Once I feel the price is low enough. I thought this was going to change. I thought this pair was going to make a new C retracement, um, and it did not. So it remained, the C retracement remained at the support level 2, which is 10.7, and it hasn't hit that number yet. So with all that said, I'm adding a few more indicators on there and wanted to explain to you how I utilize these other indicators. And again, I'm really new at this, so I sound a little bit shaky. I'm sorry about that. I'm just trying to give it to you how I know it. I'm sure there's a lot of pros out there that can pretty much pick this chart apart and basically predict the next movement. But based on what I see here, I drew what's called a pivot line. This right here is the pivot line. Pivot line is 13,800. That's the actual pivot line. Basically, the market, a pivot line indicates where it's hit the most. So in other words, it crossed the pivot line this way, crossed the pivot line going up, crossed the pivot line going down, and now it's crossing the pivot line going up again. And that's basically a good indicator of where the actual pivot is of a trade. So if you if you think of like maybe a swing, you have that actual level of what, where the swing swings from, and you're going up and down, up and down. And that's how I kind of look at a pivot line. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, but that's how I utilize the pivot line. We also have what's called support and resistance. Okay, so a lot of my trading is I look for, depending on the direction, like in this case, it's bullish, bullish trend. I look for support to get hit, and I also look for, trend lines like counter trend lines to get broken. So once those trend lines are broken, I tend to focus on where the pivot point is and where there's going to be support, and then I look at the next candle, and that will determine whether I see a bullish trend or a bearish trend. So in this case here, it did hit support level 1 of 11,653. I believe that was Friday, December 29th. It hit that number, and then it's bounced up from there. It crossed the daily pivot of 13,800, and it looks like it might be heading towards resistance 1 of 16,494, or it could bounce from this old trend line, upward trend line. If you see that right there, it could bounce off of that and bounce back down. So only time will tell. I mean, this is pretty much the best I can do. I'm not a pro at this. I know that you asked me to put together reasons why I picked these indicators and what it is and so on and so forth. This right here is a bullish Fibonacci chart with counter trend lines, and I pay attention to these trend lines being broken. These right here are resistance 1, resistance 2, and these here are support levels. And these are the things that I pay attention when I'm trading. Something I'm going to do right now is probably draw some new support, or maybe another counter trend line, maybe this way, because it looks like this is running bullish, and I will probably, yeah, there it is right there. So we're gonna do an extension on that one. We're gonna make it obviously red, because if it goes underneath this trend line, then obviously it's gonna start heading to its support level 1. So a couple of things that I'll be looking for is if it breaks the pivot point, if it breaks this support level right here. Definitely expect this pair to drop to 11,653. And something I didn't mention, I'm not a financial advisor by any means. I'm just an investor. So make your best judgments before you trade. And these are basically my my analysis and what I do. I'm still kind of new at it, so I apologize if I sound I fumble a little bit. I am still learning, and I hope you guys have a great 2018, and I hope you make a lot of money. I'm going to keep putting charts up in reference to how I feel certain currency pairs are going to what direction they're going to, whether it's going to be up or down. And I like to share that with everybody because it helps our trading community become stronger and more knowledgeable. And one of the things that I'll never ever forget is the fact that I belong to this MTI trading group, and I learned so much from the pros. I learned a lot from the Martinez family, which I respect highly. And I really want this to be a great year for all of us. I'm hoping that we can all make some pips and some money. So with all that said, have a good year, and I will talk to you guys hopefully in the Facebook groups, and maybe exchange some ideas. All right, talk to you later.